Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're all about getting you the info you need, like cutting through all the noise to understand what's really going on. And today,
Okay.
we're looking at something that I think a lot of you have probably felt like it's been kind of in the air, like this interesting trend of small businesses not just like holding on,
Right.
but actually kind of outperforming, the big guys in 2025.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we've been digging into an article called The Shocking Truth about why tiny businesses outperform big brands in 2025. And it's actually more than just like a feeling, there's actually data now backing this up.
Totally.
It's like a real shift happening in the business world.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're going to deep dive on today, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are these smaller companies? What are they doing that's different, that's giving them this kind of edge right now? And,
Yeah.
have you noticed, I'm sure a lot of you have, like, you're finding more and more of those unique products and services. Those things that you can't really find anywhere else, like coming from these smaller independent businesses.
Yeah,
We're going to figure out why that's happening.
absolutely.
So let's kick things off with something super fundamental. Okay, agility and flexibility.
Okay.
The article makes this really interesting point about the difference between the speed at which big companies can move versus these smaller, more nimble operations.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting here is like the structural difference. If you think about a huge company like a corporation, to get anything new off the ground,
Right.
it's like navigating this massive bureaucracy. There are layers of approval and so many departments got to weigh in, and it can take, months, sometimes even years
Oh, yeah.
to make even a small change.
Absolutely.
But for a tiny business, it's like a much more streamlined process.
Right.
Fewer people involved, less red tape.
It's like that saying, right? Like, too many cooks.
Exactly.
Imagine.
Too many cooks spoil the broth. And the article actually suggests that some of these small businesses, they're able to adapt almost instantaneously
Yeah.
to new trends or customer feedback. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's like, imagine trying to turn a super tanker versus, a jet ski.
Yeah.
That's kind of the difference we're talking about here.
Exactly. And they actually give a great real-world example in the article.
Oh, perfect.
Your local independent coffee shop versus like a massive chain like Starbucks.
Right.
You'll see that little independent shop, they'll jump right on board with that new single origin bean everyone's raving about. It would switch to more sustainable packaging.
Right.
Because a couple of customers mentioned it.
Yeah.
But for a giant company like Starbucks to make those same changes,
Right.
it involves like overhauling their entire supply chain,
Oh, yeah.
getting sign-offs from like a zillion different executives.
Yeah.
It's a much slower process.
It totally makes sense. And I think for anyone listening, think about a time when you really wish that a big company would just like get it, adapt to something that like you and everyone else wanted.
Right.
These small businesses, they can actually spot those unmet needs
Yeah,
and often fill them in real time.
absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to something that I think is super important and really resonates with people.
Okay.
This idea of a personalized customer experience. Big brands, for all their resources, sometimes can feel a little bit like a machine.
It's true. And I think if we step back and look at larger consumer trends, people are really valuing that personal connection
Right?
over just a transaction.
Yeah.
They want to feel seen and heard and understood. And big companies with all their systems and call centers, sometimes struggle
Totally.
to provide that individual attention that people crave.
You're not a person, you're like an account number.
Exactly. You're a data point in their spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But you think about a small business, and the article actually gives the example of a local bookstore. They host author events, they have book clubs, where people connect over shared interests. It's like they're building a real community
That's awesome.
around books. And the owner probably knows your name,
Yeah.
remembers what you like to read.
Right.
You just don't get that same feeling walking into a giant chain bookstore.
No, you don't.
That local bookstore is creating a sense of belonging, a real human connection,
Yeah.
which is super powerful, and it creates a loyalty that goes way beyond just price or convenience.
Totally.
And this raises a really interesting question for you listening. Think about a time when a small business went above and beyond,
Yeah.
gave you that personal touch that really made a difference. What are those experiences that really stand out?
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about another advantage that small businesses have.
Okay.
Carving out these niche markets and really becoming specialists. It's
So-
kind of counterintuitive, but trying to be everything to everyone can actually dilute what makes you special.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
You know, big brands, they often aim for the widest possible appeal,
Right.
trying to capture the largest market share.
Makes sense.
And while that strategy can work, it can also lead to a sort of blandness, you know, a watering down of what makes them unique.
Right, like they become a generalist in
Exactly.
a world where people are actually looking for something specific.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But small businesses are doing the opposite. They're hyper-focused.
Right.
The article uses the example of Etsy sellers who might specialize in like handmade sustainable baby clothes or something like that.
Oh, that's a good example.
They're not trying to compete with like Target on everything.
Right.
They're speaking directly to a specific group of customers
Yeah.
who really value ethical production and unique craftsmanship.
Absolutely. And I think what's cool about that is by focusing on that narrow area,
Yeah,
they actually become the experts in that thing.
totally.
Yeah.
They understand all the nuances of their niche, you know, inside and out,
Yeah.
and they can tailor their products and services with incredible precision
Right.
to meet the needs of their ideal customer. It's about depth of expertise and relevance over just like broad appeal.
I love that.
So think about, you know, those specific things that you're looking for, those needs or interests you have. Where do you go to find exactly what you want?
Yeah.
Chances are it's a smaller, more specialized provider.
That's a great point. Okay, so this leads really nicely into the next idea, this idea of community engagement and local support.
Okay.
You know, it seems like when a big corporation talks about giving back, it can feel a little bit distant.
Yeah, that's a common perception for
Yeah.
sure. You know, their corporate social responsibility initiatives, they might have a broad reach, but they can lack that direct, tangible impact that a local business has on its community.
Absolutely. And I think small businesses are so often like woven into the fabric of their communities.
Yeah.
You know, they're sponsoring the local soccer team, they're donating to the food bank down the street. They're really visible participants in the community.
Absolutely. And the article gives this great example of a family-owned bakery that sources all their flour from a local farm.
Oh, I love that.
They're not just selling bread, they're directly supporting another local business, contributing to the regional economy.
Yeah.
And they're building a loyal customer base that really appreciates that farm-to-table connection.
Yeah. It's like a win-win-win.
Exactly. And that local connection fosters so much goodwill.
Absolutely.
You know, in a time when people are really conscious of where their money's going
Right.
and the impact it has, choosing a local business feels like a more meaningful way
Yeah.
to support your community and your neighbors. It's about more than just the product. It's about investing in the place you live.
I love that. Okay, here's something interesting, and it might surprise some people, this whole idea of digital transformation and social media savvy.
Okay.
You know, you might assume that big companies with their giant marketing budgets would just dominate online.
Right, you would think so, but sometimes those huge budgets can actually lead to a less authentic online presence.
Interesting.
They might have these super polished campaigns, but they could struggle to connect
Yeah.
with younger, more digitally native audiences
Right.
in a genuine way.
Right.
You know, there's often a sense of like being advertised at
Totally.
rather than having a real conversation.
Right. It's not a two-way street.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
But these tiny businesses, they're often masters of social media,
Yeah.
connecting directly with their customers in a way that feels really authentic.
Totally.
The article mentions this independent clothing designer who uses Instagram to share their design process,
Oh, cool.
answer customer questions right in the DMs.
Yeah.
And they're building this whole community of fashion lovers around their brand.
Yeah.
It feels much more personal and accessible.
Right. Because they're a person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's key here is they're using these platforms for real engagement.
Yeah.
They're showing the human side of their business.
Right.
They're interacting directly with their customers.
It's not just about broadcasting.
Exactly.
It's about having a back and forth.
Exactly. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Have you ever, as a listener, been drawn in by the social media presence of a smaller brand?
Oh, yeah.
It's that authenticity that really makes a difference.
Totally. It cuts through all the noise and, you know, this whole phenomenon, it feels very lean and agile.
Yeah?
Which brings us to a really relevant resource that they mentioned in the article,
Oh, cool.
the book The Lean Startup by Eric Ries.
Oh, yeah.
For anyone listening who's thinking about starting their own business or even just wants to understand this trend better,
Right.
this book sounds like a must-read.
It's a fantastic book,
Yeah.
and Eric Ries' whole philosophy is about building a business in this iterative way.
Okay.
constantly testing your assumptions
Right.
about what customers want,
Makes sense.
getting feedback from the market, and being ready to pivot your strategy based on what you learn.
Yeah.
It's about minimizing wasted effort and maximizing learning from real-world experience.
And that connects so directly back to what we were talking about earlier, right? That agility and flexibility. That ability to quickly adapt and change based on what's actually happening in the market.
Totally.
It seems like a huge advantage for these
100%.
smaller businesses.
Yeah, it's like baked right into their DNA.
Totally. So the lean startup, it sounds like it gives people a concrete framework for how to actually thrive in this kind of environment.
Absolutely. It's all about building a business based on what you're learning, not just on a hunch
Right.
or a fixed plan.
Right.
And it gives you really practical tools for experimenting, for measuring progress,
Yeah.
and for adjusting as you go, which are all key ingredients
Totally.
for success in this landscape that really seems to favor these smaller, more nimble businesses.
So to kind of bring it all together, it seems like these small businesses are really killing it in 2025
Yeah,
because they're agile and flexible. They offer that personal connection.
right.
They're really focused on specific niches. They're embedded in their communities.
Yeah.
And they're really smart and authentic in the digital world.
Yeah.
They're not just surviving, they're actually outperforming the giants.
And I think what's interesting is they're not trying to beat the big brands at their own game.
Right.
They're leveraging their own unique advantages to connect with and serve customers
Yeah.
in ways that larger, more bureaucratic organizations just can't.
Right. They're playing a different game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't about big brands failing.
Right.
It's more about the increasing power and value of the approach that these smaller businesses are bringing to the table.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, considering all this, what new opportunities are out there for people who want to start their own business in this kind of economy?
Right.
Or how could big companies learn from these smaller, more human-centered companies?
Totally.
It's definitely a lot to think about.
Yeah, food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.